It's always the most touching experience in life is to intersect with other souls. I always see it as a soul journey. They say it's not we're physical beings on a spiritual journey. We're actually spiritual beings on a physical journey. So I really am always touched, and I thank Ellie and all of you here for making this happen. And it's an honor, a real honor to be here. I just want to say one thing about confidentiality, since it's so vital, and we all are sensitive to that. So though this is being streamed and videoed, but none of you are in it, and there will be plenty of time here to speak just between us. Will be offline. So I just want to alleviate anyone's concerns, if anyone has that. I'm not doing the housekeeping here, but I just thought
the anonymity.
Right. Because, but on the other hand, why should we even do it online? It's for a simple reason. There are many people that are afraid to come to a room like this. And we need to be able to help them build the courage, everyone at their own pace, obviously. So as we all know, healing is all about not just you healing, but not selfish healing, but selfless healing and sharing that. I'm just mentioning because I'm extremely sensitive to this. People speak to me all the time, and confidentiality is always at the top of everything. It's part of the sensitivity. So much of what was done to us was done in dirty secrets and dirty silence. So we have to respect silence and growing through that. I just wanted to say that about. So again, a great honor. And I'll just speak, the best words are the words from the heart and to the heart. There was a group of young, what we call today teens at risk, like 18, 19, 20-year-olds, boys and girls that came to see me off the record a little while ago. And one of them knew me well and felt that maybe it would be useful just to have a conversation. So I said, sure. So it wasn't an on the record, wasn't a formal interaction. Usually those are the best. And as we sat down, these are all teens that were in rehab and coming out of either drug addiction or alcohol addiction or other substances, other experiences. So I just went around the table and I asked, tell me, nobody sets out in their life to say, hey, I want to become an addict. You've never met anyone that said, that was my aspiration to become a drug addict. That's just not an aspiration. So how did you end up there? How did you end up trapped in such a dark place? Which they all acknowledged, of course, they were, and they were coming out of. And it was just interesting to hear the reactions. One person said, my home life was hell, was a mess. My parents were going through an ugly divorce. It was just a way of numbing myself and just being able to get through it. Another said I was terrible friends. Others were betrayed or abandoned. I mean, everyone had their horror story. And then one person said, frankly, I actually had pretty good friends. My family was decent, but I was terribly bored. And I had a lot of energy inside of me and I had nowhere to go with energy. And so I was looking for some high and I couldn't find it. So whatever came my way. I remember one guy first offered me a joint and then they offered me a little drinking and then we went and played cards. I got stuck in gambling. It was all highs. I was just getting high. I wasn't getting hurt at the time. And the next thing I know, I'm stuck. I can't get out of it. I can't stop. So I was addicted to the high. And then everybody else weighed in. It was just interesting to me because boredom is usually not the thing you hear. It's such an innocuous thing. What's the big thing? Everybody's bored a bit. Who's not bored once in a while or more than once in a while? But the point I want to make is, which I shared with them, was the vacuum. Any addiction or any type of obsession for that matter, whether it's good or not good, is always filling a vacuum. And vacuums are very powerful because vacuums create tremendous energy, just negative energy. So when there's a vacuum, nature abhors a vacuum and the spirit, the human psyche abhors a vacuum. A vacuum can be very simple as, I have nothing to do today. And then somebody offers you some little exciting activity, good or bad. And I have to, just full disclosure, since we all are transparent, I'm an addict. But thank God I was never addicted to a substance. I'm just an addictive personality. And when I was a younger man, in my teenage years, I was lucky enough to find a healthy addiction. And that addiction was, and I'll share with you what it was, I was what I would say today, a rebel without a cause. And I was looking for something that really would change the world in some way. That's what my idealism was. I was a dreamer, a fantasizer, if you wish. I fantasized about these things. And I was in my mind, I wasn't drawn to any particular substance. I wasn't drawn getting high. I just wanted to be connected to that. And a long story short, it wasn't an easy journey. I came upon what is called, what some people would call today, mysticism, Jewish mysticism, Hasidic thought. You can call it Kabbalah. It has a lot of different names. The name is not important. It's Jewish spirituality, and it was like music to my ears. And I became addicted to this music. And I don't mean this as I'm trying to be cute here, because I know addiction is not a loose word to throw around, but it was addiction because it was not optional for me. It was like I was obsessed. I saw in it a language that spoke to my soul. And speaks to soul. Imagine you going into a doctor and he shows you an x-ray of your body. But then imagine someone shows you an x-ray of your soul. No therapist can do that. No psychologist can do that. And it was really that resonating experience that I say, you know what? Here's a picture of what we look like, that inner self. And it became my obsession. As a result, I guarantee you, if I had not found that, I don't even know if I'd be coming to a room like this. Because I probably would have, who knows where I would have ended up. I don't even want to imagine. But I realized from that addiction, the word addiction, of course, is a dirty word in a way, but it really means you're connected to something in a way you can't detach yourself. Now, there may be some attachments that actually would be quite healthy and holy to have such attachments, but they have to be to the right thing. And they have to be to things that don't control you, you control it. So attachment is not the problem, it's what you're attached to. So I want to just introduce two words. These are Hebrew words, but since we're talking about, as Shnei said, 3,800 years of text. You know, there's something about ancient wisdom that has power. First of all, it's lasted through the years, longevity. Secondly, trial and error. So I speak now as a proud Jew, as you can tell. I'm not dressed up. This is not masquerading. This is actually me. A real beard and a yarmulke and all that. And but I find that as the Jewish people, as you all know the history, have really gone through every form of oppression, every form of genocide, every form of trauma. So whatever we individually are going through, what the Jews went through collectively and also individually. So there's a lot of wisdom to be gleaned from a people like this. So the two words I want to introduce are, one is the word for unity, for connecting to something, attaching to something, unity. In Hebrew, the word is echad. Some of you may be familiar in the Hebrew prayer. There's a most famous liturgy, the prayer called the Shema, where it says, "Hear, O Israel, hear one God." The idea of oneness. You know, today we call it singularity, the unity, the ultimate unity theory, you know, in physics. The search for the unified field theory, forms of unity. Science is all about unifying fragments, and psychology is about finding some hub, some type of focus that connects our disjointed or fragmented lives. So the word is echad. Now, echad has a numerical equivalent. In Hebrew, the letters have numbers, called a gematria. So echad is 1, 8, and 4. So that's 9, 13. There's another Hebrew word, which is the word for love. Love, ahava. To love something also consists of 4 letters, and they also add up to the number 13. Whenever you have two words that add up to the same number, that means their spiritual connection is very profound. So what's the commonality between oneness and love? I think everybody understands. When you love someone, you feel connected to them. When there's hatred, there's divisiveness, there's disconnection. So connection and love and unity are all part of one idea. Now, you think about it, if you just would dissect in a very simple way the concept of being addicted to something, you're connected to something. The thing is, what you're connected to may not be good for you, but it's a connection, it's an attachment that you can find difficult to detach from. Whatever the reasons are, I'm not even getting into now what the void is and what caused us to be detached. So essentially, it's just a form of, we'll call it dysfunctional attachment, or it's a form of what people call today attachment syndrome, that's attached to the wrong things. So the ava is there, the love is there, the unity is there. The problem is you're connected and you're attached to something that is not good for you. Now, why would that happen to a person's life? Because we are fundamentally and inherent attached creatures. We are not singular individuals that are not attached. We are not an island unto ourselves. Now, you can make the argument and say, how do we know that? Well, think of a life. What would it be like if you were alone the rest of your life? You never met another human being. What would that do to would we go insane? Would we go mad? Would we be able to even survive? But it begins much earlier than that. And I always like to think of it, we were talking before, in technology, they say let's say an iPhone 10 is better than an iPhone 9 officially, right? The next version is always better. I would submit that when it comes to life, the child, version 1.0 is better than version 2.0. And it goes downhill. But let's, from there. For all, I know you can tell me speak for yourself, but the fact is, we all begin our lives in a very interesting place. I don't know if you ever thought of it. You begin 9 months in your mother's womb. Whether you love or you hate your mother, that's where you began your life. And in your mother's womb, you were completely engulfed and submerged in embryonic fluid. You didn't breathe on your own, you didn't eat on your own, you didn't drink on your own. Completely protected in this womb. I mean, it's one of the most mysteries in medicine today. They still haven't figured out that whole stage in life, like what happens to the psyche. You know, the physical development of the fetus, but what about the psychological development, the spiritual development? So I'm going to share a few thoughts about it shortly, but the point I want to make is that 9 months, complete attachment, completely nurtured. It doesn't get more nurtured than that. And it's not suffocating at that point. It gets suffocating if the womb-like experience is being re-experienced 20 years later. That would be a problem. If your mother is completely, consuming you. But at that stage, it's the healthiest thing. And I've always thought about this. The scientists are always talking about, like, why are we drawn to water? You know, we have beachfront property. We like to go swimming, oceans. We simulate it in a pool. So the biologists say the reason is because we were once amphibians. So we originate from the water. So we gravitate back to water. We're no longer amphibians. We're no longer fish. But the Kabbalists would say, and the mystics would say, you know why we gravitate to water? Because water is the most attached experience. When you go underwater, what do you feel like? There's a certain peace and calm. Obviously, you can't stay there too long. But there's a calm. You're like surrounded by something that's not you. That's the ultimate imagery of love. You're surrounded by something not yourself. That means it's not your ego, it's not self-love. Something else is completely surrounding and submerging you. And that's exactly what happens for 9 months in our mother's womb. Now, I shudder to think, if we didn't have those 9-month head start, even with it, look how difficult life is. But without it, so we have actually in our psyches, etched in our deepest states of our unconscious, those 9 months. You don't remember it, I don't remember it. We don't even remember our first early years. But it's part of who we are. That's how we began our journey. And the reason for this, because it's the healthiest form of attachment where one person completely loves you. And the most fascinating thing is your mother can be completely dysfunctional. And still God made it in a way that her womb will nourish and nurture you. Now, obviously, I don't want to mention scenarios where mothers abuse their own fetuses and through drugs and alcohol. That's, of course, a whole other story. But we're talking about in a more regular scenario. And then after that, the umbilical cord is cut, and we begin our lives. And what is the first experiences in our lives, the way it should be, is again love. If your parents are healthy parents, they bring you home from the hospital. Now you're a separate entity, but you have no power of your own. So they have a beautiful crib for you and a beautiful blanket. And they're giving you the embryonic experience, except now you are a separate entity. And if everything was working well, if the template was perfect, that would be your life. Healthy parents validating you, nurturing you, loving you, healthy attachment, healthy love, and healthy unity. Everything is great. So we all wonder, of course, so what happened? How did it get from there to here? You know, you ever look at yourself as a little baby in a picture? You sometimes say, how the hell did I become this from that? You were once this innocent, vulnerable, beautiful child, and hopefully loved and all of that. But things happen. And what happens is the detachments that begin, whether either parents are not available, abandonment on subtle levels, on more extreme levels. I'm not even talking about overt abuse and overt trauma. Even the most subtle begins to impact this little child This little innocent, vulnerable child that each one of us sitting right in this room, we were once those people. Everyone on earth was once a child like that, believe it or not. This complex adult was once a little child, completely impressionable, and begins to experience the disappointments of life. I always wonder where children learn how to lie. You know, any of you have children, I have grandchildren. You always have to tell them, don't tell everything you see at home. They don't know how to lie. Where do they learn how to lie? Children are seamless. They're a complete pure attachment. They learn how to lie from, you know who? Their parents, who tell them to lie. Or through osmosis, they pick it up. So what do you have? You have a situation where suddenly this healthy, attached child, with all going for it, is suddenly subject to all kinds of experiences that really go counter to the natural resonating truths that we feel. And then you're told, in the worst scenario, you're hurt, and they say, no, you weren't hurt. Something the matter with you. You weren't abused. What's the matter with you? Why are you making the family unhappy? I mean, I don't have to tell you all the nightmares that we hear. And then you start second guessing yourself. 1 second. My instincts tell me something is wrong. Everyone else is telling me, people I love or supposed to love me, and I love them, are telling me I'm wrong. So what do you think happens? So suddenly, if you think about it, if we're able to put this in like a focus and magnify it, it's like an unbelievable tragedy. And by the time we're aware of it, when we become whether teens or adults, we start becoming aware the damage was done. Where this beautiful, attached, loving child who had everything going for it was ultimately detached. So what do you think is going to happen? You think this child is going to just take that lying down? Of course it's going to look for attachment. It's going to look for attachment wherever it can get it. Because it didn't get it in the right place, so it's going to go anywhere. Now, I'm not saying anything here that most of you have not heard. What I'm adding here is a little context to know, because the good news we have to get to is that you didn't begin your life a victim or a survivor. You began your life in a beautiful, attached place. Every one of us. None of us were not prepared. So when we enter to whatever experiences we have now, there's plenty resources available within you. And that's the beautiful thing, within you. I always loved Michelangelo's line when they asked him, how do you carve those beautiful angels in the marble? He was a sculptor, an unbelievable sculptor. And he said the following words. He said, I see the angels trapped in the marble, and I carved and set them free. Think about that. That's an artist speaking. He didn't create art. He saw it, but it was trapped. It was trapped like a diamond in the rough, waiting to be released. So some of us are trapped in marble, some in concrete, some in other substances, which we don't have to necessarily spell out. And we're busy trying to find that angel. But many of us think you have to find it on a shelf, or in a book, or in a film, or in a person, or in a help. Anyone that's going to help you in your life is going to help you carve and find it in here. So what you have going for you, and this, I believe, is the foundation of all healing, and all growth for that matter, for all of us, whatever background we come from, how hurt we were or not hurt, is your soul. To me, that is the most precious commodity, because that part of you is a part that is there from the beginning, long before any hurt, any scars, any wounds, and remains with you the rest of your life. The only question is, how trapped is it? And our challenge is how to free it. So the idea of attachment, I find that the more somebody is addicted, frankly, the more energy they have. You find mediocre people, their addictions are also pretty mediocre, you know? And people who are, I know, okay, there we go. So maybe we should have a prize for the most, you know. But listen, I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound too macabre, but frankly, corpses are not anxious. Corpses are not passionate. They don't have any addictions because they're dead. So the life itself is a sign of energy. And the more energy there is, what do you think happens with a lot of energy? Why is nuclear energy so devastating? Because it's so powerful. It can do great things and it can do horrible things. So I'm saying that as a consolation that the more addicted you are, you should get an award. But you should know that the more energy you have, and the energy is, however, being channeled the wrong place. And whenever I see that, I see the creativity. You know, how creative addicted people can be. How they have to find some way to solve their need. I mean, again, everybody can know it in their own hearts. So the challenge is, how do you rechannel it? Not destroy it. Because that type of idea, abstinence, of trying to just stop it all, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with all the energy? It's all positive energy. I mean, on another form, for example, grief. When people suffer loss, death, there's grief. Grief is very powerful energy. The only thing is, it's energy that implodes. So the challenge is, how do you channel a grief toward positive ends? You'll see anyone that has ever grieved in life, and I've know a lot of Holocaust survivors in my own family and friends and community, and I see all those that really grew. They didn't forget what happened to them. They just channeled it. So I want to share two stories. And this is a talk we can go on and on. We have to have some limits here, right?
Look at the crowd.
Who's the producer here? Who's the cutoff
Not
man?
about the producer,
Okay.
It's about the people. If you see something reflected in the people around you, then you have to keep going. It's the only reason I'm here. Not because I want to be here, right?
Well, but I do have a flight tomorrow.
Tomorrow. That's the joke of the rabbi. There's a calendar on the wall.
Yeah. Simchas Torah. So Rosh Hashanah is coming at some point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I want to share two things. I remember something that just left very deep impact on me, and that is, you remember John Bradshaw? Anybody heard of him? He's one of the pioneers in the early 70s that they called inner child work. He was the son of a pastor, and father was a raving alcoholic, and he did a lot of work in that field of shame, unhealthy shame versus healthy shame, how he was ashamed to bring his friends home. All that you live with when the father, your hero, is an embarrassment, and worse, an abuser. So I don't remember what it was. I was watching, I think it was a PBS program, or maybe it was a video of it, I don't recall. And he was doing a workshop, and I was somewhat like half cynical of these workshops. They were a setup, was it not a setup? But I didn't remain cynical for long. So there he has a group of maybe 50, 60 people in the room, men and women. And when I began listening to it, I hear in the background a thumping sound. And after a minute, I realized that he's playing a recording. The background music, so to speak, was the heartbeat. It was a heartbeat. You ever hear an amplified heartbeat? Pum, 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 pum. That was the background. And he's speaking in this very soothing voice. And he's telling everyone, this is the heartbeat of your mother. He asks everyone to close their eyes and says, your mother, 9 months, this is the only sound you heard 24/7. When you're asleep and you're awake. A heartbeat, pum, pum, pum. I can't replicate it exactly, but just imagine a heartbeat. That's what you hear. And it has a very soothing sound, actually. It's very rhythmic. It has a balance to it. It's of course, the very pulse of life itself, contraction, expansion. And everyone's watching, and everyone's listening. And he goes on, and he starts speaking like your mother would be speaking to you. I was like transformative. I have to tell you, I'm listening, and he says, the mother is speaking now to the child, and the member in the background is the heartbeat. And the mother says, I've been waiting for you my whole life. I can't wait to meet you. God is sending your soul as a gift to this world. And I feel honored to be able to be your protector, your nurturer, your gardener. I prepared a special room for you in our home. White linen, fresh. Always know that I will be there for you. And he's going on like this. I don't even remember all the lines. It was, and the place starts crying, obviously. And I started crying too. I was watching it on screen, mind you. But it resonated like so deeply. And he goes on. And while all along is the heartbeat, the pump, pump, pump. Your mother waiting for you. And whatever you'll need in life, my little child, whatever happens, you can always come to me. Unconditional love. It was to me like, then he stops at some point, of course, and the place is like stunned. I mean, everyone's quiet. They don't even open their eyes for a few minutes or a minute. And I realized what he was saying. And then he says to them, so what happened now? I mean, he didn't even have to say anything, but he did. What happened here? Either you're crying because it reminds you of what actually happened in your mother's womb, or most likely what didn't happen and the lack of it, and feeling that you deserve to have heard that and you deserve that love, because that's exactly what was happening for 9 months. You were surrounded by this heartbeat and completely protected. What he did was, and what the impact it left on me, and it's years now, I saw this, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 40 years ago, was that we do have a model to retrace. It's not like we're lost. It's not like, okay, you know what? I got myself into trouble. Now, how do I get out of this place? And the rest of your life is a struggle with your demons. No, you do have a point of reference. Not only that, you have that's you. That's the real you that you have wandered away from, that you have betrayed or was stolen from you. And the question is, how do you get back to that? And then I realized that everything I've ever learned, in all the mystical and the psychological and spiritual teachings, are all really about that. That when you say the word God, which is frankly a dirty word, I don't like to use that word. We've talked about this. Why? Because what does it mean? It means nothing. For most people, God is part of the abuse. God was that so-called superpower that all my abusive religious authorities worshipped. So who wants to have God in their lives when they have a God of that nature? But in truth is, and I'll translate it in my own terms, if you could define the purest part of yourself, the best part of yourself, it's your soul. You don't have to use the word God. You can use the word divine. You can use the word pure. You can use the word, I remember a word for years I was giving classes to people in the arts and entertainment industry, and they were very spiritual but not traditional. So I realized I was at a disadvantage because who knows how they're stereotyping me. So instead of the word God, I used words like higher reality, the essence of it all. For New Age groups, for more New Age style, I would say undefined layers of unconscious energy or something like that, you know? And yeah, and I went on and on, waxing eloquent about this higher reality, the essence of who we are, and connecting to it, following a blueprint until we reach this destination of total fusion between the inner and the outer, between form and function, between soul and body, between the unconscious and the conscious, the defined and the undefined. You got deterministic and the undeterministic for the little physics in there too. Why not throw it in? And after a few weeks, a guy came over to me and he said to me quietly, he says, "Are you talking about God?" So I said, "Yes, but don't spoil it for the others." So I am talking about it, but I'm talking about it not the one that is the stereotype. I'm not talking about the one we grew up with, where the great Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev, the great Hasidic master, said to self-proclaimed atheists, "The God you don't believe in, I also don't believe in." You know? So I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about you, the purest part of you, whatever you want to call it, that spirit that allowed you to be created and born and not come unarmed, come with all the resources, 9 months of that heartbeat, of that message, whether your mother said it or not, but that was the message. And that's your point of reference. All you're looking for is to regain that. You look at all the poems and the songs written from the beginning of time, they all are talking about how do we regain our innocence, paradise. We want to return to paradise. You know, you remember they say the number one film in history, they say Citizen Kane. At least some people think it is. And what is it all about, this mysterious Rosebud? What's Rosebud? You have to watch the movie 20 times to figure it out, frankly. But Rose, I know I'm saying that because I thought I was stupid. Then I heard everybody else says, I also don't know what it was until someone told me, you know. So Rosebud is a sled that boy, William Kane, who they say was Hearst or whatever it was ripped away from his family. And it was the last scene in the snow where he had this sled. It was the symbol of his innocence. And every time in his life something major happened, and was also on his deathbed, he kept repeating Rosebud. So it was this psychological symbol of we want to reclaim that purity. Who here does not have a positive memory from our childhood, even if it was not a healthy childhood? It's one of the best memories in our lives, those pure moments, you know, you went to the park. Even simple things, innocuous things. Those are the fragments that remain often that allow us to hold on to. So the challenge, of course, is now how do we get back, as I said, from here back to there? That requires, obviously, a process. But I actually believe Now, one of the great ways, I don't know how many of you dabbled in or worked with music therapy, but music has actually such power. You ever hear a song, it transports you to another time and place. A song reminds you of things, it can make you cry, it can make you laugh. So here's one of the things the mystics teach, that when the child is in the mother's womb, it's being taught songs. And the soul, before it came to this world, its language was song. A soul does not understand words. It only understands song, because song is a resonating voice. There are studies that show today that when you play music, the fetus, the developing fetus, reacts. They've seen the arms and legs of a baby in its mother's womb reacting to music. So I ask you, how does it know what music is like? Even language is a miracle, that at age 2 or 3 we can speak. How do we figure that out? But there you could say, okay, we're mimicking our parents or whatever it is. But song, and the answer is because song is the natural voice of the soul. So when you sing a song, something about it is very much water-like, like embryonic. It's like feeling surrounded by song. You ever see it? Surrounded by the music. Put on a headset, you're just like, exactly like being underwater. So it has the same idea. So just another, more than another, I think it's a tremendous tool that's underused in helping us connect to that part of ourselves. Now, this by no means is negating any of the therapeutic and the groups and all the methods being used. There are many different. The more the merrier, frankly, as long as it's working. But it's always good to have more resources that can also help you connect to who you are. Because I find the things that will be sustainable and lasting in our own healing are not the things that we impose on ourselves. It's the things that resonate most. The things that if you can access a deeper truth within yourself and bring that forth, those are the things that remain with you because it's inherent in you in the first place. The rule is in life, anything acquired is never as powerful as the inherent. So if you can access the inherent connections and attachments in a healthy way, that is something that can remain permanent, and you will not need the same type of work of keeping on imposing yourself new habits and new rituals. So look, time is of essence here. I wanted to just share a few words from the heart, which hopefully I did to some extent, in the context of the title of our getting together here. I wanted to share another story, but you know what? I think, let's take a pause here. And what comes next on the program, I'm not really sure. I could sing a song, actually, if you like. I have some ready. But we can do that afterwards. But I wanted to just keep a little balance here. So I was respecting everybody's time and schedule here. So please. But before I do, I will say this. I will say a few more words. No. I wanted to just say, I want to conclude this first part where I began. I want to just extend my feelings. I feel that, as I said, there's nothing more sacred than interacting on this level. So many of us are, whether at work or home, we're in battle zones. We're competing. We're the jealousies. There's all the different machinations we all go through. So to have moments of truth where you can just sit and talk and bare your soul and talk openly, and you don't no fear and no concern you'll be judged or you'll be looked at in some other way, I find to be extremely cleansing and healthy. And frankly, if I may use the word embryonic, because no one judges you when you're in that embryonic state. So I just wanted to again share my feelings of camaraderie, I guess, because at the end of the day, all we have is are each other. And the more we have healthy attachments among each other, the more it weakens the unhealthy attachments in our lives. So thank you for that. Sure.